Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study through the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. We're currently in the book of Numbers, chapter 20. Now, keep in mind, we are moving, the book of Numbers jumped, remember, from the second year to the 38th year. So we're moving from the 38th year now, going into the 39th year. 39th year. So just within this short period of time, there's going to be a lot of action from until the 40th year. Okay, that will also close out this first generation. And we're going to see some of this, that the first generation, the older generations, are going to they have been dying out in terms of, but some of the more notable people will be reported that they're going to pass. And then, of course, one of the last persons would be Moses. Now, keep this in mind. The first generation of people who are dying out are in their 80s, 90s, 100s. Okay, so but because of their unbelief, and then that unbelief was the incredible sinfulness, unbelievable sinfulness. So, okay, so Numbers, chapter 20, it says the entire Israelite community entered the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and they settled in Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there. Now you remember, Miriam was Moses' sister. It's unclear, or at least I don't know if it is as clearly stated that Miriam was the sister who saw Moses at his birth. I haven't seen yet. It's assumed. We really don't know how many sisters he had. We know Aaron was his brother, so Aaron was younger than Moses. Which in itself is sort of interesting, because remember when at the time of Moses' birth, Pharaoh had put out a command to kill all of the male Jews. Okay, and so. The Jews have had a history of just evil people trying to annihilate them, and it's just kind of amazing. Other than the spiritual reason, you kind of ask the question, well, why? So the first was we saw that there was this fear of the Jews as they multiplied in Egypt, and then the first attempt was to just kill off all the males so that there would be no growth. Moses' mother ignored that command, as well as the midwives. So when Moses was born, she hid him for 3 months, and then when it couldn't be, she just put him in the river. But his sister at the time was watching him as he was floating in the river. Pharaoh's sister came and, in a sense, adopted Moses. She rescued him from the river and then adopted him. Now that sister, okay, it's unclear if it was Miriam or not. We can assume it was, but we don't know. But if that is the case, then this would make Miriam almost, we'll see. Moses at this time is probably about 118, like that, 118. So if this is Miriam, it would make her close, maybe, 130, 135 years old. Aaron is going to be about 100 and what? About 115ish, like that, around there. He's slightly younger than Moses. So they're kind of up in age. And as I said, what this is signifying is the older generation, that generation that God said would die out. Okay, so this is some of the more notable deaths So it says Miriam died and was buried there. There was no water for the community, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. And the people quarreled with Moses and said, "If only we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Now, why have you brought the Lord's assembly into the wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Why have you led us up from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It's not a place of grain, figs, vines, and pomegranates, and there is no water to drink." Now, right here is the reason why they are dying off, why they will never see the promised land. So the youngest person, in other words, the cutoff age for those who were going to die in the wilderness was 20. So 20 years old and younger. These would be the people who would go into the promised land. So now we're talking about the people who's complaining now. The very youngest would be around 60 years old. 61, like that. So verse 6, then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting. They fell down with their faces to the ground, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Take the staff and the assembly and assemble the community. You and your brother Aaron are to speak." Now I want you to keep this in mind here. Okay? You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch it. While they watch, and it will yield its water. And he will bring out water for them from the rock and provide drink for the community and their livestock. Excuse me. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence just as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron summoned the assembly in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, ye rebels. Must we bring water out of this rock for you?" Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff. So that a great amount of water gushed out of it, and the community and their livestock drank. Now, before we go on, let me just say this. Remember, when a true prophet of God will always know God's clear instructions. Okay? And when we kind of go back, remember, God did not respond the way Moses responded here. The people said, they complained. They complained in their typical fashion. And God just said, "Speak to the rock." Moses hits the rock. Okay? Actually, he hits the rock twice. Okay? That's going to be a big no-no. Okay? Despite Moses' disobedience, and this will be a disobedience. That was a disobedient act. God still gave them water. So understand that sometimes a person can be flawed, because we're all flawed, and yet God still uses them. And that's the point here. Moses disobeyed God, and yet God still gave them water. However, God is now going to deal with Moses. Verse 12, but the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me to show my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land I have given them. These are the water of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and he showed his holiness to them." So Moses pays a big price. And what's kind of interesting is that he almost makes it, right? In other words, he almost makes it to the promised land. I mean, in the sense, he's at the end, just a year from this. And this one mistake here cost him the promised land. And we'll see more on that later. And God is not going to relent of this. God is not going to say, Moses, yeah, I know you messed up. You had a bad day. You lost your temper, right? You lost it. No. Moses will die on this side of the Jordan. He will not make it into the promised land. That's God's punishment for Moses breaking his command, not showing his holiness, as he said. Verse 14, Moses sent messengers to Kadesh, to the king of Edom. This is what your brothers Israel say. Now the Edom is the Israelites, descendants of Esau. You know all the hardships that have overtaken us. Our fathers went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt many years, but the Egyptians treated us and our fathers badly. When we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice, sent an angel, and brought us out of Egypt. Now look, we are in Kadesh, a city on the border of your territory. Please let us travel through your land. We won't travel through any fields or vineyards or drink any well water. We will travel the king's highway. We won't turn to the left until the light, and we won't turn to the right or the left until we have traveled through your territory. But the Edoms answered him, you must not travel through our land, or we will come out and confront you with the sword. Kind of interesting, because remember, all of the nations around had heard what God had done, and then the hardness of this here is kind of interesting. The hardness of their heart. Verse 19, we will go on the main road. The Israelites replied to them, and if we are heard to drink any of your water, we will pay its price. There would be no problem. Only let us travel through on foot. Yet the Edomites insisted, you must not travel through. And they came out to confront them with a large force of heavily armed people. Edom refused to allow Israel to travel through their territory, and they turned away from them. Now, God is going to repay them later, so we will see this. It says, after they set out for Kadesh, the entire Israelite community came to Mount Hor. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor, on the border of the land of Edom. Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I have given the Israelites, because you both rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Kind of interesting, because it sort of suggests here that obviously had Moses and Aaron, maybe Aaron would have made it into the promised land. But the one reason here that is clearly stated that the reason why he will not make it to the promised land is because of the incident when him and Moses struck the rock. And notice he's also blaming Aaron. Now, Aaron had a lot to be blamed for too when it comes to Israel and Israel's sins. The golden calf. Remember, Aaron actually made the calf. Okay, so he has a lot on his record. Bad report. Okay, all right. Verse 25. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up to Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. Aaron will be gathered to his people and die there. So Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they climbed Mount Hor in the sight of the whole community. After Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, and when the whole community saw that Aaron had passed away, the entire house of Israel mourned for him 30 days. Now, so we see, kind of interesting, Miriam, his sister, now Aaron, his brother, who has not made it into the promised land, and in some respects it was inevitable for Aaron not to make it in. As I said, Aaron without Moses appeared to be very weak spiritually, and that was seen with the golden calf incident. As long as Moses was around, Aaron was okay. But even then, Aaron didn't. One of the things that was said in criticism about Aaron in the golden calf incident was that Aaron did not restrain the people. We kind of see this here with Moses. Now, I don't know, if Aaron could have prevented Moses. In other words, I don't know if Aaron was privy to know that Moses was going to strike the rock twice. We don't know. But God certainly said Moses and Aaron, because of that, will not make it into the promised land. Now, as I said, we're moving kind of forward here. We're moving along as we're kind of closing out this first generation. So Miriam has died, and then Aaron has died, and then you see the transfer of the priesthood, in the sense that the garments, showing that Eleazar now is the high priest. Now keep this in mind: the high priest. There was only one high priest, and then the entire tribe of Levites were the ministers of the sanctuary, the tabernacle, eventually the temple. Okay, but there was only one high priest who made the atonement offerings for the people yearly. All right, we're going to continue on in the next chapter, chapter 21. And see you then, guys. All right.